I came home from the clinic, exhausted and ready to collapse into my favorite armchair. But what I found waiting for me inside made my heart stop. My breath caught in my chest as I stepped through the door, feeling an eerie silence wrap around me like a thick fog. Something was off. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I knew this wasn't the same home I'd left just a few hours earlier. It wasn't the house that had welcomed me for years. It was as if everything I'd known, everything I'd built, was starting to crumble before my eyes. Before I tell you what happened next, would you do me a favor? Hit that subscribe button, turn on the little bell, and let me know where you're watching from. It really helps us know where these stories are reaching. I'm Evelyn, 72 years old, and I've spent a lifetime in the quiet comforts of routine. I live alone in a small house just outside of town. My life isn't complicated. I keep to myself, take care of my garden, and visit the clinic for checkups when I need to. My daughter, Sarah, well, she's my pride and joy. Or she was, until that day. You see, the moment I stepped into that house, I found more than just an unsettling silence. I found the kind of betrayal a mother never expects from her own child, a betrayal that would change everything between us forever. And it was only the beginning. The kitchen was the first place I went, my feet dragging as I made my way through the house. The smell of coffee still lingered in the air, but there was something unsettling about the stillness. I hadn't even taken off my coat when I noticed it. A letter, crumpled and half hidden beneath the edge of the kitchen counter. I almost missed it. If it hadn't caught the light just right, I might have walked right past it. But there it was, an envelope addressed in Sarah's handwriting, the ink smudged as if it had been hastily written. My heart thudded against my ribs as I picked it up, every part of me screaming not to open it. But I couldn't stop myself. I had to know. I unfolded the letter slowly, my fingers trembling. The words felt like they were burning into my skin. It wasn't the kind of letter a daughter writes to her mother. It wasn't full of love or care. It was cold, calculated, a plan to take something from me, something I had worked my whole life to build. My breath caught in my throat as I read on, each sentence cutting deeper than the last. She had been planning it all along. I thought I knew my daughter better than anyone, but this was something I couldn't have prepared for. If you're still with me, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Your support means the world, and it helps me reach others who need to hear these stories. I stared at the letter, feeling a mix of disbelief and rage simmering inside me. Sarah had always been my world. I had given her everything, trusted her with the most precious part of me, my legacy. Yet here I was, holding the evidence of her betrayal in my hands. I wanted to scream, to throw the letter across the room, but I stayed still, fighting the tears that burned behind my eyes. I had to think. I had to figure out what this meant, what it all meant for us, because once the truth came out, nothing would ever be the same again. I couldn't stop thinking about that letter. I tucked it away in my drawer, but it lingered in my mind, a constant nagging reminder that something had gone horribly wrong. The silence in the house became suffocating, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for me to take the next step. I spent the next few days trying to ignore it, going through the motions of daily life, pretending like everything was fine. But every time I looked at Sarah's empty chair at the dinner table, every time I heard a knock on the door and hoped it was her, my stomach churned. It was all a lie. I was surrounded by her lies. I started going through old boxes in the attic, trying to distract myself. There were years' worth of family photos, old Christmas cards, and mementos from Sarah's childhood. I hadn't been up there in years, but something told me I needed to look. Maybe, just maybe, there was something more I could uncover. And then, buried beneath a pile of dusty blankets, I found it. A box marked with her name, Sarah's box. I froze for a moment, wondering if I should even open it. But I knew I had no choice. Whatever I was about to find, I had to know. Inside were more documents. More lies. She had been keeping them hidden from me all this time, bank statements, legal forms, contracts, all evidence of her plotting behind my back. It wasn't just a small betrayal. It was something far bigger than I had ever imagined. Sarah had been planning to take everything from me, from the house to my savings, and worst of all, my reputation. She had been forging signatures, making deals with people I didn't even know. It was a game to her, and I had been nothing more than a pawn in it. Before I continue, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. I sat there, holding the documents in my hands, my mind spinning. This wasn't just about money or property. This was about trust, something that Sarah had shattered beyond repair. I had given her everything, and she had repaid me with nothing but deceit. I couldn't let this go. I wouldn't. The anger inside me was rising, but it wasn't just anger. It was a cold, sharp resolve. I had to make her pay. I would make her regret ever crossing me. But how? How would I bring this to light? How would I punish her for everything she had done? That's when the plan started to form. Piece by piece, the days passed in a blur. I kept to myself, locking myself away in my study, staring at those documents like a puzzle I needed to solve. It was too much to digest all at once, but the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. Sarah had left me no choice. I wasn't going to beg her for an explanation, I wasn't going to plead for forgiveness. That wasn't the way this was going to end. She had betrayed me in the most unforgivable way, and now she would pay for it. I started doing my research, looking into what I could do legally. At my age, I wasn't naive. I knew the rules, the processes, and most importantly, I knew how to play the game. It was time to get the right people involved. I called my lawyer, a no-nonsense woman who had handled my business matters in the past. When I told her what had happened, she didn't flinch. She was all business. It felt strange, sitting in that office across from her, the weight of everything I had learned pressing on my chest. But I knew this was the only way. I can't let her get away with this, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. She's crossed a line. It's not just the money, it's the lies, the manipulation. It's everything. My lawyer nodded, scribbling down notes. We'll file the necessary papers. You've got everything you need to prove what she's done. She'll pay for it. But, Evelyn, be prepared. This is going to get ugly. People will take sides, and your relationship with her might never be the same. Are you sure you want to go through with this? I looked at her, the fire inside me burning hotter than ever. I have no choice. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and make sure you don't miss the next chapter. You won't believe what happens next. By the time I hung up the phone, I felt a strange sense of calm. I had a plan now. It wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to be quick, but Sarah was going to learn that there were consequences for betraying family. I would make sure of it. But I also knew I had to be careful. I couldn't just go charging in blindly. I had to be methodical. Every step needed to be calculated. She had underestimated me. She thought I was just an old woman, harmless and easy to push aside. But she had no idea who she was dealing with. The game had changed, and this time, the stakes were higher than ever. Now that I had the pieces, it was time to make my move. But first, I needed to see her, face to face. It was time for the next step in my plan. I couldn't keep putting it off. The longer I waited, the more it felt like the anger inside me was going to eat me alive. I needed to hear her voice, to confront her, to make her understand that I wasn't some fool she could manipulate. So, I picked up the phone and dialed Sarah's number. My hands were shaking as I pressed the button, but I didn't let the fear show. I wasn't afraid of her anymore. I had something she couldn't take away. I had control. The phone rang for what felt like an eternity before she picked up. Hello? Her voice was calm, too calm. Like nothing had changed. Sarah, I said, my voice tight with emotion but steady. We need to talk. Now. I could hear the hesitation in her voice, the way she tried to play it off. Mom? What's going on? I didn't give her a chance to smooth things over. Don't play games with me. I know what you've been doing. I know everything. I let those words hang in the air, watching the silence fill the space between us. For a moment, she didn't say anything. I could almost feel her scrambling, trying to figure out how much I knew. Then, she finally spoke, her voice cold and defensive. I don't know what you're talking about, Mom. What do you mean? I could almost hear her heart racing. But I wasn't going to make it easy for her. The bank statements. The forged signatures. The contracts. I have everything. You thought you could get away with this, didn't you? There was a long pause. I could feel the tension on the other end of the line, like she was weighing her options, trying to decide whether to deny it further or finally come clean. But she knew there was no point in lying anymore. I'm sorry, Mom, she said, her voice breaking, but I didn't believe her. I never meant to hurt you. I thought I was doing what was best for me. I wanted to laugh, but I didn't. Instead, I clenched my fist around the phone. Best for you? I said, the words coming out low and dangerous. You've stolen from me, Sarah. You've betrayed me, and now I'm going to make sure you understand the cost of that. I could hear her start to cry, but it didn't faze me. Not anymore. I wasn't the same woman who had raised her with love and care. No, I was a woman who had been burned, and now I was prepared to watch her burn, too. Please, Mom, don't do this, she pleaded, her voice desperate now. I was just trying to survive. I didn't feel sorry for her. Not anymore. Survive? You've had everything you need. You've taken more than your fair share. Now, it's my turn to take something back. If you're still with me, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. You won't believe how this ends. I'm not doing this for revenge, Sarah, I said, my voice hardening. I'm doing this for justice. And you'll understand that soon enough. The call ended, but the weight of it lingered in the room long after. It wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I could feel the pieces falling into place, and I knew that the next time I saw her, everything would change. But I had no doubt in my mind anymore. She had crossed the line, and now I would make her face the consequences. The next few days felt like a blur of paperwork and phone calls. Every moment was consumed with the details of my plan. I had my lawyer, my documents, and the unwavering resolve that had been building inside me since that damn letter. I had been cautious for too long. I had trusted Sarah, I had been patient, but that trust was gone now. There was no more room for mercy. The only thing left was cold, calculated justice. I sat at my kitchen table one morning, staring at the legal forms that my lawyer had sent over. My fingers trembled as I read through the fine print, but the anger inside me kept me steady. I could hear Sarah's voice in my head, pleading with me, begging me not to do this. But I knew better now. She wasn't the daughter I thought she was. She was a stranger in my house, someone who thought she could take advantage of me. And she was wrong. The phone rang, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was my lawyer. I answered immediately, my heart racing with anticipation. Evelyn, she said, her voice clipped. I've reviewed everything. We're ready to proceed. I've contacted the authorities, and I'm sending over the first batch of legal documents. The sooner we file, the sooner we can start the process of making her pay for what she's done. I felt a sense of satisfaction wash over me. This was it. The beginning of the end for Sarah. The game was no longer in her hands. It was mine now. Good, I said, my voice firm. Make sure she understands what she's up against. If she thinks she can get away with this, she's gravely mistaken, my lawyer replied. But we need to be prepared for some backlash. The whole family is going to be involved, and I don't need to remind you that this will get messy. Are you sure you're ready for that? I paused for a moment, the weight of it all sinking in. It wasn't just about Sarah anymore. It was about the family, about making sure that no one ever thought they could walk all over me again. I'm ready, I said, my voice colder than it had ever been. I'll handle the mess. You just get it done. As I hung up the phone, I took a deep breath. The first step was taken. But there was still more to do. This wasn't going to be a simple legal case. This was going to be a battle, one that I intended to win. Sarah had made her choice, and now it was my turn to make mine. Before I go on, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell. The next part of this story is going to take a turn you won't see coming. I sat there, looking at the stack of papers in front of me, and for the first time in days, I felt calm. The anger hadn't subsided, but it had transformed into something else. Power. I had all the cards now. I knew what Sarah had done. And now, I was going to make sure she faced the consequences. I had already decided that she would never get away with this. Not this time. The legal web I was weaving was only the first thread in a much bigger plan. The next step would be the hardest, confronting her. And when I did, I knew she wouldn't have a leg to stand on. The news started to spread quicker than I'd anticipated. My lawyer filed the initial papers, and soon enough, the phone calls started coming in, one after another. Relatives, friends, acquaintances. People who hadn't called me in years were suddenly eager to share their opinions. Some were supportive, though I could hear the hesitation in their voices. like they didn't quite understand what had pushed me to this point. Others were less kind. "Evelyn, you're making a huge mistake," my sister, Clara, said when she called. "You've always been so forgiving. Sarah's your daughter. She's just made a mistake, but this is too much." I felt my jaw tighten as I listened to her. Clara had never really understood me. She didn't know what it was like to watch someone you loved tear apart everything you had worked for. "Forgiveness is one thing," I said, my voice steady. "But there are some things that can't be forgiven. What Sarah did wasn't just a mistake. It was a betrayal. And I can't just let that slide." "But, Evelyn," she started, her voice faltering, but I interrupted her before she could continue. "No," I said, my voice sharper than I'd intended. "You don't understand. I gave her everything, Clara. My trust, my time, my love. And she repaid me by trying to take it all away. This isn't about forgiveness. It's about justice." She was quiet for a moment, and I could almost hear her thinking. "I just don't want to see you hurt, that's all. Please don't make things worse." I hung up the phone without responding. There was nothing more to say. The betrayal had already been done, and I wasn't about to let anyone guilt me into backing down. It was too late for that. The calls didn't stop there. One by one, the family members reached out. And each conversation was the same. Some tried to talk me out of it, others wanted to know the details. And a few even tried to side with Sarah. But none of them understood. None of them knew the depth of what I was dealing with. And as for Sarah, she wasn't going to get any sympathy from me. She had made her bed, and now she would have to lie in it. As I sat at my kitchen table, the phone still warm in my hand, I realized something. This wasn't just about me anymore. It wasn't just about the betrayal. It was about standing my ground, no matter who it upset, no matter how messy it got. I had built this life, this family, and I was going to protect it, whether Sarah liked it or not. And then, it hit me. It wasn't just about Sarah anymore. The more I thought about it, the more I realized the entire family had played a part in this. Maybe not directly, but in their silence, their complacency, they had allowed this to happen. They hadn't been there when I needed them. And now, they were all too eager to tell me what to do. But it was too late. The decision had been made. The pieces were already in motion, and there was no going back. Before I continue, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell. Trust me, you'll want to hear what happens next. I could feel the tension in the air, the weight of everything hanging over me like a storm cloud. But no matter how loud they shouted, how much they tried to sway me, I wasn't going to change my mind. The more the family pushed me, the more certain I became. This was the right thing to do. Sarah had crossed a line, and I was going to make sure she paid for it. No matter what. The day had come. I could feel it in my bones, the tension that had been building for weeks, the quiet before the storm. I had everything in place. The papers were filed. The legal proceedings were underway. But now, it was time for the final confrontation. I had promised myself I wouldn't back down, and I wasn't about to start now. I had called Sarah. She agreed to meet. I knew it wouldn't be easy. There would be no apologies, no heartfelt pleas for forgiveness. But I had to see her face to face, to make her understand the gravity of what she'd done. This wasn't just about punishment, it was about making sure she knew exactly what she had taken from me. And how far I was willing to go to make her pay. I waited for her in the living room. My hands resting on the table in front of me, my eyes focused on the door. The house was quiet, too quiet. The clock on the wall ticked away the seconds, marking time that felt far too long. Then, the doorbell rang. My heart jumped, but I stayed seated. I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. When Sarah stepped through the door, she looked the same, too calm, too collected. The woman I had raised, the woman who had promised me she would always be there. But that woman was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. Someone who had crossed a line I would never be able to forgive. "Mom," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry for everything. I don't know what else to say. Please don't do this." I stood up slowly, walking towards her. My gaze never left her face. "You've said enough," I replied coldly. "You've been lying to me for months. You've been taking what isn't yours. You've tried to destroy everything I've built. And now you want to beg for mercy?" She took a step back, the guilt in her eyes evident. But it wasn't enough. I didn't need to hear her excuses anymore. The damage had been done. You think this is just about money, don't you? I continued, my voice rising. It's not, Sarah. It's about trust. It's about loyalty. And you've shown me that I can't trust you anymore. That's something I'll never get back. And now, it's time for you to face the consequences. She shook her head, her tears falling freely now. Please, Mom, I didn't mean for it to go this far. I thought I was doing what was best for me. I didn't flinch. You thought you could just take from me, and I wouldn't notice? You thought I wouldn't fight back. I let those words sink in. Well, you were wrong. Before she could respond, I reached into the drawer beside me and pulled out the legal documents, the ones that would change everything. I've already filed everything, I said, holding them out for her to see. The authorities are already involved. There's no turning back now. I'm not doing this because I hate you. I'm doing this because you need to understand the cost of your actions. I could see the shock in her eyes, the disbelief that this was really happening. But there was no turning back. The punishment had already begun. If you're still here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. The truth will come out, and you won't want to miss how this all unfolds. I watched her take the documents from me, her hands trembling as she glanced over them. I could see her trying to process it all, but I wasn't going to make it easy for her. She had put me in this position. She had made me take this step. Now, she would face the consequences. This is your doing, Sarah, I said quietly, but the weight of my words hit her harder than anything I had said before. You made this happen. And now, you'll have to live with the consequences. Her tears flowed freely now, but it was too late for apologies. There was no going back from this. The punishment had been set in motion, and it was a long road ahead for both of us. But I would no longer be the woman who stood by and let herself be taken advantage of. The battle was mine to win, and I wasn't about to lose. I thought I'd feel relief. After everything, after the endless days of planning, the phone calls, the sleepless nights, I thought that once I'd finally confronted Sarah, once the papers were filed and the legal action was set in motion, I would feel some sense of closure. But I didn't. Instead, I felt empty, like a weight I didn't even know I was carrying had just been lifted, only to reveal a deeper hole. The days after that confrontation felt like an endless blur. The paperwork kept coming. My lawyer called with updates, and every call seemed to bring more complications. I had expected Sarah to fight back. But what I hadn't anticipated was the ripple effect this would cause, beyond just Sarah, beyond even me. It didn't take long before I started hearing from more of the family. They were angry. They didn't understand why I had gone so far. Some called me heartless. Some called me stubborn. And some, my own flesh and blood, called me a fool. Evelyn, my cousin Linda said, practically yelling through the phone. You're destroying this family. Sarah's your daughter. You can't just throw her away over a mistake. A little forgiveness wouldn't hurt. I couldn't even respond. I didn't have the energy to explain myself anymore. The truth was, I was tired. Tired of being the one who always gave, always forgave, always put others before myself. And look where that had gotten me. Betrayed. Manipulated. Used. There was no going back, but it wasn't just the family that was stirring the pot. Sarah had lawyers of her own, and as soon as they saw the direction this was heading, they made their move. They filed countersuits, trying to discredit me, trying to drag my reputation through the mud. I knew they'd fight back. What I didn't expect was how dirty they'd play. Lies were spread, half-truths were twisted. And my name was smeared in ways I hadn't even anticipated. There was one evening, late at night, when I was sitting at my kitchen table, the news blaring on the TV in the background, that I realized something. It wasn't just about Sarah anymore. This battle was bigger than her. It was about showing the world that there were consequences to betrayal, no matter how close you were to the person. But as the consequences grew, so did the bitterness inside me. If you're still following along, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Trust me, the final twist is coming, and you won't see it coming. I watched as Sarah spiraled. She was doing everything she could to turn the tables, to make it look like I was the villain. And for a while, it worked. People who had once been on my side were now questioning my decisions. The media caught wind of the story, and suddenly, it was everywhere. My family, my friends, the people I thought I could rely on, everyone was choosing sides. And I was starting to feel the isolation, but there was one moment, one conversation that changed everything. It wasn't a call from my lawyer or a visit from a relative. It was a letter. A letter from Sarah. She had sent it in the mail, and I almost didn't open it. I had every intention of throwing it out. But something told me I needed to read it. And when I did, the words were like a punch to the gut. I never wanted things to go this way, the letter started. I was scared. I thought if I didn't act, I would lose everything. But I see now that I was wrong. I hurt you, and for that, I am truly sorry. It wasn't an apology I had been expecting. And it wasn't an apology that made everything okay. But it was enough to make me pause. For the first time since this whole mess started, I realized that maybe, just maybe, Sarah didn't fully understand the consequences of her actions. She hadn't known what it would cost her, what it would cost both of us, and now, the stakes were higher than ever. The battle I had fought, the revenge I had sought, it had come at a much greater cost than I had ever anticipated. And as I sat there, holding that letter, I realized that justice had been served, but at what price? What was the cost of all this? Of the betrayal? Of the revenge? Of the consequences? Before I close this chapter, if you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button. The final chapter is coming, and you won't want to miss how this story ends. The truth was, I didn't know if the battle was truly over. But one thing was clear, revenge hadn't brought me peace. It had only opened a door to more pain, more regret, and more questions. And the most difficult question of all was whether the price of justice was ever really worth it. The days that followed were quieter. Not peaceful, just quieter. It wasn't the kind of calm that settled the storm. It was the kind that filled the room with a heavy silence, as if everything had already been said, and yet nothing felt resolved. I had made my choice. I had fought for justice, and for a moment, I thought I had won. But now, I wasn't so sure that I couldn't stop thinking about Sarah's letter. I had read it a dozen times by now, but each time, the words seemed to twist in my gut. I was scared. I thought if I didn't act, I would lose everything. She hadn't just betrayed me, she had betrayed herself, too. The guilt, the fear, the realization that she had crossed a line she couldn't undo, those were the things I had never wanted to see her carry. But they were there now, and they weighed on me like a stone in my chest. The family? They were still divided. Some sided with me, others with Sarah, but the tension was palpable. There would be no reunion, no happy resolution. That much was clear. I had taken a stand, and now, I would have to live with the consequences. But what were they? The court case was still ongoing, the damage to our family had already been done, and my reputation was in tatters. I wasn't sure if I'd ever get those pieces back, but as I sat in my favorite chair, the one that used to bring me comfort, I realized something. It wasn't about fixing what was broken. It was about accepting what had happened, and what I had done. I had sought revenge. I had wanted justice. And maybe I'd gotten it. But at what cost? At the cost of my daughter? At the cost of my peace? I thought of my younger self, the woman who would have forgiven. The woman who believed that love could heal everything. But time had changed me. Life had changed me. And the truth was, love alone wasn't enough to heal every wound. Some wounds needed to be addressed with consequences, with action, and as I sat there, pondering it all, I came to a realization: justice wasn't just about punishment. It was about making sure that we never let ourselves be walked over again. It was about standing firm in the face of betrayal and never allowing it to define us. But healing? Healing wasn't about revenge. Healing was about learning to live with the choices we make, and the consequences that come with them. It was about finding peace within ourselves, even when the world around us is in chaos. If you've stayed with me this far, I want to thank you for listening to my story. It's been a journey for me, and I hope it's given you something to think about. If you've enjoyed this story and want to hear more, hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell, and share your thoughts in the comments. You never know, the next story might just be one you need to hear. And remember, justice may give us what we want, but only forgiveness can give us what we need.